AI Conquistador family. The biggest news of the week is GPT 5.2 just dropped. We covered the first impressions yesterday, so we're not going to spend the whole video on it again, but we do want to set the tone. GPT 5.2 is legitimately strong. It's one of those releases where you can feel the jump, especially in coding, knowledge work tasks, and the kind of frontier math problems that usually expose weaknesses. If you've got any paid OpenAI account, it should be available inside chatgpt.com. And if you're testing it, do this one thing: try it on a real work task. You've been procrastinating, not a cute demo, a real task, because that's where you notice the difference. Now, speaking of OpenAI, something happened that would have sounded impossible a year ago. Disney is partnering with them. Yes, that Disney. And what that means is OpenAI is going to bring Disney characters into Sora, so fans can prompt Sora and generate short social videos using the likeness of a lot of beloved Disney characters. This is the first major announcement like this at this scale, and the reason it matters is simple. There is a massive market for fan-created stories, fan fiction, alternate scenes, and remix culture, and Disney is basically the biggest holder of recognizable IP on Earth. Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, the classic Disney characters, and the long tail of everything Disney has acquired over decades. So from Disney's perspective, this could be huge, because if fans can create stories around IP they already love, it becomes a flywheel of attention. And here's the wild part. A selection of these fan-inspired Sora short-form videos may be available to stream on Disney+. That's not just letting fans play around, that's potentially turning fan creation into distribution. Now, of course, there's an obvious concern here. Guardrails. OpenAI is going to have to go above and beyond to prevent misuse, because the internet is the internet, and people will try to push boundaries immediately. But let's be real, no one can fully prevent a non-deterministic system from being prompted into something it shouldn't output. That's the nature of these models. So the big question is, how do they handle it? What gets blocked, what slips through, what becomes viral, and how fast Disney reacts when something gets out that they don't want out? Because we all know what's coming. At some point, there will be a viral clip featuring Disney characters doing something they absolutely should not be doing. And that's when we'll learn if this partnership has real durability. Now, according to what's been reported, this is a 3-year licensing agreement, and Sora will be able to generate short user-prompted social videos drawing on more than 200 Disney, Marvel, Pixar, and Star Wars characters. Also, Disney is becoming a major customer of OpenAI, committing to using the interface and the API. And the most important piece, Disney is reportedly making a $1 billion investment for equity. That is major. And it sets a precedent, because once one massive rights holder gets comfortable licensing IP into generative models, more will follow. Now, in the same week, there's a report that Disney sent a cease and desist to Google. And this part matters because it shows the strategy. One company is getting the licensing deal. One company is getting the legal pressure. According to Variety, Disney accused Google of widespread copyright infringement related to training and generative outputs using Disney's protected works. And the wording is serious. Copying a large corpus of copyrighted works without authorization to train and develop generative models, and then using models to commercially exploit and distribute copies of protected works. If that allegation holds up, it's a huge fight. If it doesn't hold up, it's still a signal. Disney's drawing a line in the sand and forcing the licensing conversation. Either way, OpenAI just landed a blockbuster deal, and it's hard to ignore how clean the timing was. A major model release, a major IP partnership, and then a rival getting legal heat. We're not doing hero worship here, but if there's one lesson from the last few years, it's this. Never bet against a top-tier dealmaker in a market that's still being defined. Alright, next story. Time magazine revealed the cover for the 2025 Person of the Year, and this year it's the architects of artificial intelligence. There are 2 covers, and one of them is basically a lineup of the biggest names shaping the AI era. You've got major leaders from big tech, major chip makers, and major AI labs. And what's really interesting is the visual reference. It mirrors that iconic photo of workers building Rockefeller Center during the Great Depression. It's a famous image, and it carries a lot of weight, because depending on how you interpret it, it can feel like progress and ambition, or it can feel like risk and pressure and a future being built too fast. So, the symbolism is doing a lot of work there. And I'll say this, if we're giving out Person of the Year energy, it's not just the CEOs and researchers, it's also the people building with these tools, day to day. The engineers, the creators, the operators, and honestly anyone learning how to use these models responsibly while the ground is still shifting. Now, quick reminder. Before we keep going, on this channel we talk everything. AI, the wins, the weirdness, the strategy, and the real-world implications. And yes, we post daily. So if you want to stay ahead without drowning in noise, you're in the right place. Alright, next. Adobe is bringing major products into ChatGPT. This one feels obvious, but it's still a big deal, because we're watching ChatGPT turn into a hub, not just a chatbot. A hub where tools plug in. Photoshop, Adobe Express, Acrobat all becoming accessible inside the ChatGPT environment. And the reason it matters is not just convenience, it's workflow gravity. Whatever tool lives closest to the user's starting point wins more usage. And right now, ChatGPT is becoming the starting point for a lot of people. So instead of bouncing between tabs and apps, you can do more inside one place. Now, add natural language on top of that. Instead of memorizing menus and workflows, you can describe what you want. Change the lighting, remove the background, resize this, simplify that, export it as a clean PDF. And even if you already know Photoshop, it's still faster to ask for the first draft in plain language and refine from there, because the first version is often the bottleneck. So, Adobe integrating here is basically Adobe saying, we're going to meet users where they already are. Alright, next story. According to the information, China's DeepSeek might be using frontier Nvidia chips to train the next version of DeepSeek. And that's a big deal, because those chips are restricted. Chinese companies are not supposed to have them. Now, a lot of people in the industry have suspected for a while that the reality on the ground is messy. But the reporting here is specific. DeepSeek developing its next major model using several thousand Nvidia Blackwell chips, and the claim is that those chips were smuggled in. And the strategy, if true, is the kind of thing that will absolutely become a movie scene someday. Send servers to data centers in countries that can legally buy the chips, dismantle the servers, ship the equipment in pieces, reassemble inside China. Wild. Now, why does this matter beyond the drama? Because there's been a lot of talk that domestic chips could be enough for training next-gen frontier models. And this suggests that maybe they aren't enough yet. Or at least not enough for the pace and scale required to stay competitive. Also, DeepSeek has built a reputation for efficiency in training and reinforcement learning, and we're not taking anything away from that team. Their techniques have been reviewed and adopted across the industry. Things like sparse attention, which helps reduce compute at inference time by activating fewer parameters. And Blackwell chips in particular are strong for sparse attention style workloads. So, if the hardware story is true, it could explain part of the performance ceiling. Now the fun part. We're excited to see what DeepSeek R2 looks like, and some reports suggest a possible window around Lunar New Year. If that happens, expect a lot of comparisons and expect a lot of how do they do this threads all over the internet. Alright, next. Runway just dropped. Gen 4.5. Their newest text-to-video model iteration, and the quality is getting to that point where you have to pause and actually look for artifacts. The realism, the detail, the color grading, the motion, the camera behavior, it's all getting scary good. And what's interesting is we're now at the stage where multiple labs are hitting frontier quality, so it's less about one model being unbeatable, and more about which one wins on consistency, control, speed, cost, and the specific type of shots you need. When you look at complex scenes, lots of objects, reflections, fluid motion, physics, moments, expressive humans, the uncanny valley is shrinking fast. And this isn't a prediction anymore. This is weekly reality. So if you're a creator, a marketer, or anyone producing visual content, the question isn't, will AI video matter? It's, how fast can we adapt our workflow so we're not left behind? Because the people who figure out repeatable pipelines first will ship more content, test more ideas, and compound faster. Alright, next story. According to Bloomberg, Meta may be moving away from open source. And this one is disappointing, because Meta's open releases created a ton of momentum for the broader ecosystem. When a major player commits to open models, it forces competition, it lowers barriers, and it creates innovation on the edges. Now, none of this is fully confirmed as final policy, but here's what's being reported. Zuckerberg is getting more personally involved day to day, and the company is pivoting focus toward a model it can monetize more directly. There is a new model, codenamed Avocado, expected sometime next spring, and it may launch as a closed model that Meta sells access to. Now, to be fair, you can still monetize open models. You can offer hosted endpoints, enterprise support tooling and services, and keep the goodwill of open releases. But if Meta truly goes closed after positioning themselves as open champions, the perception hit is worse, because it feels like a reversal. And the timing matters too, because Llama 4 did not land the way many people expected. So, a pivot after a disappointing release creates a specific narrative. Now, another interesting detail. Meta reportedly is using third-party models in the training process for Avocado, distilling from rival models, including Google's Gemma, OpenAI's GPT OSS, and Quen. And that's the irony of open releases. If you put strong models out into the world, competitors will absolutely study them and learn from them. That's the game. We still think Meta is positioned to compete hard. They have distribution, they have products, they have talent, they're investing heavily. And we never count out a company that can deploy to billions of users. We just hope they don't abandon the open approach entirely, because the ecosystem is better when more power is distributed. All right, last story for today. Rivian had an autonomy day and announced a bunch of updates. And yes, we're excited about this one because better autonomy is one of those features that changes daily life. They're introducing a third-generation compute platform, and they're going more vertical, building more in-house, including custom chips, very Tesla style. They also mentioned their in-house neural network engine running directly on the chip they're building. And here's the big debate point. They're adding LiDAR. That is interesting because Tesla famously moved away from LiDAR, arguing it's too expensive, too complex, and that vision alone should be enough. But if you look at Waymo and how well it performs in the real world, Waymo uses LiDAR. So Rivian, choosing a multimodal sensor stack cameras, radar, LiDAR, is basically a bet that redundancy and richer perception wins. And we're going to find out. Because the companies that ship the safest, consistent autonomy at scale will own a massive part of the future. So, overall, a packed week. GPT 5.2 raising the bar. Disney stepping into licensed AI creation. Time putting AI leadership front and center. Adobe integrating tools into ChatGPT. DeepSeek hardware drama that could reshape assumptions. Runway pushing AI video quality even further. Meta potentially shifting strategy. And Rivian betting on a serious autonomy stack. Now, we want to hear from you. Which story actually matters most long-term? The model releases, the IP licensing deals, the hardware reality, or the platform integrations? Drop your take in the comments. And if this breakdown helped, hit the like button, subscribe for daily AI updates, and share this with someone who wants the real story without the hype. We'll see you in the next one.